What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. As always, at the start of the season, we get that first draft video done. Then we start looking at some of the best value players in FPL. And I would consider player value if you think they should be priced higher, or if they have the potential to score the points of someone priced higher. So if you look at them, I think they're 6 million. Well, they could easily have been 6.5 or 7, or they're 6 million and I think they can score the same as this player that's 8 million. Then that to me is a potential value player. So that's what we're going to talk about. If we can get 2,500 likes on this video very quickly in the few hours after it goes live, we will look at doing another video tonight as well, if that's something you're interested in. And please do keep hitting that subscribe button. Let's hit 300,000 subscribers before Game Week 1. That would be amazing. Otherwise, let's jump into it. So we're going to kick off with 2 of the £8 million midfielders, and there are quite a few midfielders right at that price point: Saka, Kulusevski, Mason Mount, etc. And I all think they're all pretty decent if they get minutes. Whether or not they're undervalued, I'm not quite sure. These 2 are the ones that I think are the most likely to outscore their price points. So we've got Luis Diaz at Liverpool and Phil Foden at Man City. Now, I know I talk about Phil Foden a lot of people get frustrated with him, but if you look at the stats, and I am a stats kind of person, they are pretty damn good, right? So for Foden, it's 0.38 expected goals per 90, 0.28 expected assists. You can see his goals and assists per 90 returns as well, and they're both actually the same points per match. So I think if you ask people, they would say that Luis Diaz is the better option. But points per match last season, bearing in mind Phil Foden played the whole season, Luis Diaz obviously came in January, they were exactly the same. So Phil Foden's returns are pretty decent, and the fixtures are quite good as well. So West Ham away is a little bit tougher than Fulham away for Diaz, but you got Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest in the first 5 game weeks. The issue is, of course, with both these players, minutes. And that's what I was saying. This isn't a list of value players that you have to go and stick every single one in your team. You need to weigh up the cons and decide whether or not it's worth going for. And one thing to keep in mind when you're building your drafts, we will have the Community Shield before the season kicks off between these 2 teams. So it doesn't mean that the team that starts those games is definitely going to start every other game that season, but it might give you some indication of who kind of the favourites are to begin with, right? And Phil Foden, when he was fit last year, for a lot of last year, did start the majority of games. Not quite up to the standards as maybe Kevin De Bruyne, for example, but he did start a lot. Now, some of them were kind of in the number 9 position. We know that Haaland is there now, so he might be forced wide. Sterling looks like he's leaving, but Mahrez is still there. Grealish is still there. Bernardo Silva can play in the front 3 as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on what happens. But Foden's numbers are always decent when he plays for Man City. We know that Man City are going to score a lot of goals. And if it looks like he's going to start the season, you could argue that he's one of, if not the best £8 million midfielder. Of course, someone like Saka is decent as well, because they're always going to get minutes, but their numbers aren't quite as good. You might go for them for consistency, but if we're looking at potential value, someone that can get a good few goals and assists over a period of matches, and I do like Foden. Diaz as well. I think when we talk about Diaz, we almost talk about him like he's absolutely nailed, like he's going to play the same amount of minutes as Salah. Now, it does look like he was brought in January ahead of Mane leaving. So we know that that is going to be the replacement on the left. But Jota can play on the left. Núñez can play on the left as well. I'm expecting Núñez to play where he's played the majority, which is centre forward, and basically compete with Firmino. So we could see that Salah's kind of left to his own devices on the right. Sometimes Jota might play there. Sometimes Diaz might play there. But Salah will play the most. Then you've got Firmino and Núñez in the middle, and Jota and Diaz on the left, although Jota can play in the centre as well. So I think there's going to be some rotation there, but I do expect, given the amount of game time Diaz got very early on and how well he played as well for Liverpool, that he's going to get a lot of minutes. You've got Fulham away, game week 1, Bournemouth at home, game week 4, Crystal Palace at home. I mean, home game for Liverpool is always going to be decent, and if Man United do not improve from last year, then Liverpool will probably smash them as well. So I think if you're looking at £8 million midfielders, there's safer picks that are definitely going to get minutes, like Saka. But in terms of explosive returns and decent underlying numbers, these 2 are right up there. Right, let's talk about Perisic, because I feel like he's a little bit of a divisive FPL player right now, because you've got a lot of people talking about him as though he's essential, he's going to be as good as Trent Alexander-Arnold. That's how it feels like anyway. Then you've got another group of people that are like, well, hang on a second, he might not always get starts, he might not always make it to 60 minutes, you should be a bit more cautious. So I'm going to talk about the potential value and then the potential issues with him as well. So on the surface of it, Spurs fixtures are pretty good, right? We talked about fixtures a lot already. Chelsea away is obviously difficult, but the rest of the fixtures all look pretty good for the opening 6 games. So you don't really want to be looking too much further ahead than that. West Ham away, maybe not ideal, but I think when you've got a defender playing as a wing-back who's as attacking as Perisic can be, that looks pretty good to me, right? And I can already see him feeding balls to Kane, to Son, getting on the end of balls maybe from the right wing-back, especially if it's Doherty. And by the way, I should quickly mention Matt Doherty. If he looks to be the first choice right wing-back, in my opinion, he's probably even more value than Perisic. I'm just not quite sure what's going to happen there. And I think they will probably buy another right wing-back just to add into the mix. And we shouldn't forget that on the left, Perisic also has competition in Sessegnon and Reguilon as well. But numbers, good. Expected goals per 90, 0.14. Really decent. Expected assists last year were 0.25. Really good. And obviously had a pretty good goal and assist rate. Let's look at what people are worried about. So last year, 2021-22, he played 35 games and got to 60 minutes or more 32 times. So anyone that's worried about his age and stuff like that, his, the engine on him and things like that, he looks pretty good, right? Fit player, is going to be able to play a lot of minutes. Maybe the Premier League will be a bit tougher, etc. But overall looks pretty good. He was benched twice, injured for only 1 game, 8 goals, 7 assists. And looking over kind of a good few seasons, I haven't gone back for his whole career, but over the last few seasons, not too many injury concerns and a good amount of goals and assists. Remembering that Conte wasn't in charge last year. The year before he was in charge, 2020-21, still played 32 games, but he only got to 60 minutes or more 16 times, was benched 4 times, injured twice. Still a good amount of goals and assists, not quite as much because he didn't have as many minutes, but 4 goals, 5 assists. So there is maybe a little bit of worry that Conte will sub him more often. I think he'll still. I think right now he is definitely, I would say, the first choice left wing back. But because there's now 5 subs, we might see a bit of rotation in that position just because of how much work those players have to put in the system under Conte, right? Or getting forward, getting back all the time. We might see that. So I can see the concerns from people. I genuinely can if that starts happening. But I look back at these numbers and I look at these fixtures and I just think for 5.5 million, if he was going to get a regular run of starts, let's say he starts 5 or 6 of the first 6, I think he could easily be worth 6 or even 6.5 million. So to me, he has to go down as an undervalued player, but I can see why people are a little bit concerned. Okay, so obviously this is an early look at value players. We might revisit this closer to the season, but let's say that Arsenal don't sign any more wingers, right? Left winger, left forward, right forward, whatever you want to call them. I know they were in for Rafinha. It doesn't look like they're going to get him. Whether or not they're going to go for anyone else, we'll have to wait and see. But if they don't sign anyone, I'm expecting Saka, right wing, Jesus, number 9, most games, right? Those two are going to be pretty much nailed on, you would imagine. And then it's whoever takes up that left wing spot. Now, last year, Smith Rowe got a good run in the team, did pretty well, right? You remember he kept getting goals no matter what happened. But when he got injured and Martinelli came in, Martinelli kind of kept his place. There was the odd game where he didn't start, and I know sometimes he gets subbed off early, but he did seem to have that kind of position locked down. So if they don't sign anyone, and in pre-season it looks like he's first choice, for 6 million, when he's 2 million less than Saka, there has to be potential value there. His numbers are good. If you combine his expected goals and expected assists, it's 0.47. The opening 2 fixtures, okay, Palace away and Leicester at home are not necessarily ideal, but they're not awful. And then you get Bournemouth away and Fulham at home. I guess the only issue with someone like Martinelli, apart from, some risks about his minutes, are if he doesn't do well for Palace away, Leicester at home, and definitely if he gets benched in one, you might see his price start to come down before you even get to the Bournemouth and Fulham game. And then by that point, you'll be worried about whether or not he's definitely going to start. So there is some risk there. But if he does start, if he is first choice, and first choice doesn't mean you're going to play every single game from the start, but it does mean you're going to get quite a few minutes. I do like him for 6 million. So we need to keep a close eye in pre-season. Does it look like he has that left wing spot nailed down? If so, 6 million, 2 million less than Saka to allow you money elsewhere, that could be pretty decent. Okay, I wasn't sure how early to put Rashford in the video because I don't want to make you all switch off thinking that I've absolutely lost it. But I did want to talk about him because if we're thinking about players that have the potential to do a lot better, then a lot of the Man United midfielders are very cheap. right? And I know they were awful last year. We'll come on to that. But they are quite cheap. Same as some of the Chelsea midfielders, like Pulisic, for example, is only 6 million. Ziyech is 6 million. I know there's obviously concerns around minutes, but I think with Rashford, there is a genuine chance that he does start the season. Pre-season is key for any team, of course. But for Man United, with a new manager, with all the stuff going on around Ronaldo, we need to see how they're lining up in a lot of their pre-season games. Who's playing on the right? Who's playing on the left? Who's playing in the centre? And Rashford, remember, is a player that's been kind of 9.5 million in the past. His numbers last year, really bad. Man United were poor. Rashford had an awful season, but looking at those goals and assists per 90 numbers, that is not really the standard that he's been at before. If I look at all the previous seasons, like 1, 2, 3, the previous 4 seasons, his numbers have been better and better in all those years. So if he's got some confidence under a new manager, if he's getting regular starts, which he did not get under Ranić at all last year, and I think he kind of just gave up, then he could have like a new lease of life. And 6.5 million for someone like Rashford has the potential to be very cheap. I fully understand that not everyone is going to want to go with him, and he probably is a wait and see. But if we see something in pre-season, and I wouldn't just buy players that happen to score well in pre-season, but if he's looking happy, if he's playing regularly, if he's in a good position, if he's scoring goals, that could be kind of the nudge we need to go for someone that cheap. And I think when we put our squads together, like if you're tinkering with your drafts now, you probably do need a cheap attacker somewhere, whether it's in attack or whether it's in midfield. And you could argue there's a lot of, or a few at least, 6.5 million forwards or less that might be better, who are nailed on, like Mitrovic, for example, the Nottingham Forest boys, Brennan Johnson and Awoniyi as well. But yeah, I think Rashford has potential to be good value. The only thing I would say is the fixtures aren't necessarily ideal. Like Brighton at home is a game that Man United should be able to win, but obviously they lost 4-0 last year to Brighton. Liverpool at home in game week 3 is tough. But I think overall, if Rashford was to start those 4 games and was looking good, 6.5 million, like that is a price that could skyrocket quickly if he gets off to a good start in the opening 2 games. So yeah, I'm not saying you all rush out and buy him, but I would definitely keep an eye on him and Man United and Ten Hag to see what they do in pre-season. Okay, so I'll probably do a separate video on the best cheap defenders, but I wanted to include a few of the value ones in this video as well, because if you're not going 5 premium defenders at the back, you probably will have space for a 4.5 million defender. And I think Tomiyasu is right up there as probably one of the better ones. The fixtures from a defensive point of view, I think, look pretty good. I mean, Leicester is not going to be a team that's easy to keep a clean sheet against, but Palace away, Bournemouth away, Fulham at home, Villa at home, there could be the potential for a couple of clean sheets there. The one thing I would say, people got very excited when Tomiyasu was 4.5 million. And we have had in the past 4.5 million defenders that are very attacking. Tomiyasu is not one of those players. He's not that attacking. And also, I remember last year when he got injured as a Tierney owner, Tierney was then kind of not completely shackled, but he was then kind of almost asked to stay back a little bit more. Whereas when Tomiyasu is playing and when Tierney's playing, Tierney's usually the one that gets forward more than Tomiyasu. So I'm not saying he'll never get you an assist or a goal, but I think we have to kind of temper our expectations. He's a really good option because he plays for one of the best, not one of the best teams in the league, but one of the better teams in the league, I would say, with a pretty good defence, with pretty good fixtures, where you can leave him on the bench for some games and bring him in for other ones. So for 4.5 million, he's a good option, but I feel like people think because he's a fullback, he's automatically attacking, and I don't think he's that attacking at all, really. But who knows? Maybe I'll be eating my words when he gets a goal or assist in the opening few fixtures. All right, let's talk about Havertz, and a bit like Martinelli in particular, I think we need to wait and see who Chelsea buy this season, right? They probably will have to buy a striker, no matter whether they come in as first choice or as backup, because Lukaku is gone now. I know there's talk about going for Ronaldo. That seems a little bit crazy to me, because I think profile-wise, he's quite similar to Lukaku. I know he's a better player, etc., but I think Chelsea looked better with Havertz in the team last year than Lukaku, so I think that's the kind of profile of forward number 9 that they need. The fixtures are pretty good opening for Chelsea. Obviously, you've got Mount as a midfielder at the same price. But I think if Havertz is number 9 from the start and gets a good run of games, he could be a decent option. His numbers are always good. 0.48 expected goals per 90 is decent. 0.1 expected assists. He has been moved from a midfielder to a forward, so he will lose the clean sheet points, the extra points for the goal. But when he does score, he'll benefit more from the bonus system. So that's worth thinking about. So I do think if you're looking at 8 million forwards, him and Jesus are probably both quite good options. And arguably, you could make a case to go for either of them ahead of their 8 million midfielder counterpart in Saka or Mason Mount. The one thing I do want to say, about the expected goal numbers is, and I just noticed this, right? It could just be a coincidence, right? It could just be small sample sizes. It could be that at Chelsea he hasn't had that run of games for like, half a season, a whole season, because he does kind of come in and out of the team. I'm just hoping that's different this season. But at Chelsea, maybe it's more difficult in the Premier League, I don't know. He's underperformed his expected goals so far, whereas the last 2 seasons at Leverkusen, he overperformed, right? And it might just be a case of balancing out. It might be that this is the season where he overperforms. But that was interesting to me that he has so far in the Premier League underperformed his expected goal numbers. But either way, they're pretty decent. I think when Chelsea gets Sterling, which should happen, it hasn't happened at the time of recording, but if it does, that will just bolster their attack as well. He's a quality player. And they could move to 4 at the back as well. That might help Havertz too. But either way, I think if he's Chelsea's number 9 and you've got 8 million to spend on a striker, I mean, you could argue that Jesus is a better option, but Havertz definitely has the potential to outperform that 8 million tag. Okay, we're going to talk about Neto because I don't think I've heard anyone mention him yet. So I think I'm first to kind of realise that he could be a pretty good option. He's only 5.5 million. We are talking about potential value, not guaranteed value. I know some people are absolutely sick of hearing his name. They don't think he's good. They don't think Wolves are good and they're not going to go for him. That is absolutely fine. But again, if we need a cheap attacker, 5.5 million is a nice price point in midfield. I do think there's potentially better players at 5.5 million, but when you look at his underlying numbers and the fixtures combined, again, there is that potential for FPL points. So 4 of the first 6 fixtures are great. Leeds, Fulham, Bournemouth, Southampton. Newcastle at home, at least it's at home. I don't think Newcastle are going to be sudden world beaters. I think they did improve. I would expect some more improvement this year, but that isn't a game that would really put me off too much. And Spurs away is probably the tough one. Now, Neto's numbers last year were pretty good. 0.29 expected goals, 0.22 expected assists. That's over 0.5 expected goals involvement combined. His output wasn't quite as good, 0.19 goals, 0.19 assists. But he did have injuries last year and he wasn't necessarily getting a huge run of games for a lot of the season. And I do think when you look at the options Wolves have got, Neto is probably one of their better attackers and should start most games towards the start of the season. The only, I guess, issue is because of the injury, it was quite a long-term one, will they manage him going into the season? I don't know if they can afford to. I think they have to play him, but maybe that's going to be a thing. And there are obviously some concerns around Wolves' team expected goals. Right? I've seen a lot of people talk about that. They were the second worst team last year. Only Norwich were worse than Wolves in terms of attack, which isn't great. I do tend to focus on an individual's numbers, but obviously if Neto is passing to someone else in the team and they're no good or they can't finish, etc., that doesn't spell good things for getting assist points. So it's potential here. I think right now, if I had to choose a 5.5 million midfielder for Game Week 1, based on the fixtures, all players kind of potential and stuff like that, Neto probably would be the one. Let's see whether that's the same in Game Week 1 or just before the deadline. But right now, I just do think he's a pretty good option. Okay, and I know it's obvious, but I wanted to talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold anyway. Despite him being defender, despite him being 7.5 million, he is incredible value. And just to put things into perspective, right? 6.5 points per match last year, which was not a fluke. This is the best attacking defender in the game, playing for one of the best defences in the league, etc., etc. That is the same as Kevin De Bruyne, who is 12 million. Now, I know you can't directly compare midfielders to defenders to forwards, etc., but that is still ridiculous. The only players that beat him who played regularly were Salah and Son. Even Chilwell, who did really well, but that was only like a brief period of games. So he got over 7 points per match, but that was in like 4 or 5 games. Then he got injured. So Trent Alexander-Arnold is, like, for me, he's the second name on the team sheet. It's Salah first because I need that captain, and then it's Trent Alexander-Arnold. I will not pretty much tinker without them, right? I don't care how good the squad looks on paper, they have to be in the team for me. The only thing I would say, a lot of people will say, well, Robertson was 6.4 points per match and he was only 7 million. Why haven't you included him? I just think with Trent, he's more likely to be able to kind of keep that up. I think Robertson is also incredible value, by the way, and he should probably be in a lot of our teams. And he probably will have a really good points per match. But I think if I had to bet on who is going to replicate that again this season, it would be Trent Alexander-Arnold, right? His underlying numbers, expected goals, expected assists are proper decent. The fixtures are pretty good as well from a defensive point of view, so I wouldn't really be worried about them at all. He has to be in. Is anyone not going with him? Let me know in the comments below and let me know why. So there we go. Let me know in the comments below who you think are some of the best value players out there. Is there any players on this list that are in your current draft or that you completely disagree with? Let me know what you think about Perisic. Will he be a decent defender under Conte again as that wing back at Spurs? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Please do keep giving these videos a like if you enjoy them and hit that subscribe button. Let's try and hit 300,000 subscribers. And yeah, hopefully we'll have another video out later tonight. Let's see how that goes. Otherwise, I'll catch you again soon.